Hello YouTube, DG Wiggins here again, continuing our adventure with outlining for NanoWriMo 2018. In my last episode, we started using iMindMap to just sort of lay out the foundations of a top-down sort of plot structure for this outline, and basically it's just, you know, 3-act structure with a couple of things that I want to make sure that I include. Since then, I've gone and done a brain dump. That's not a brainstorm, but a brain dump, where I've basically just written down anything that I've already thought of. Characters mostly, a couple of story ideas, a few motivations, and a little bit of world description. The idea here was to just get it all out on paper, or in this case out into the mind map, and start to realize where the holes are, start to realize how much I actually don't have. And so I've done that, and you can kind of see here, Act 1, I had a lot of ideas for Act 1, and that's kind of the idea. Is, I think when I come up with a story idea, I end up having a bunch of stuff in my head that comes at the beginning of the story and maybe an ending of the story, but you know, the middle's kind of lacking, at least in that initial conception. And so here I've had a whole bunch of ideas that kind of branched off into this tree off of Act 1, and it just looked pretty, I don't know, hectic. And so something I did is I went through, and for each of these acts, I extracted them into their own map. So now I have a whole bunch of different files here. So now if I go to the new Act 1 map, something else I did is I split things up into basically requirements. These are all the things that we decided in the last video that I wanted to include in Act 1. So it's basically a big checklist. And then over here, branching off to the right, we have the scene list, which is ultimately the product that I wanted to get out of this exercise. And from here, each of those scenes get broken down into further and further more details that I want to include in those scenes. There is another view that we're going to look at predominantly in this video that's essentially the corkboard that I think is going to be a lot more easier to understand than this. But in terms of just getting the ideas out, this view hasn't been too bad actually, because you just start down one branch and keep going until you've run out of ideas. Similarly for the other acts, I don't have very much, but Act 2, actually this is 2.2, and this is the corkboard view that I mentioned. But if we go to mind map, I broke it up into requirements and scene list. I have no idea what's going to happen in the second half of Act 2 yet, but I do know that I need some action, and I need my main character to start taking control of themselves and what's going on. I also did, as I mentioned, the bulk of my brain dump was actually just characters, because that's kind of what happened. We think in terms of characters a lot of the times, and what do those characters want, and who are they, and their background, and that's kind of fun to think about and imagine. So I've done quite a bit on that end, and you can see here, I've got my main node characters and all these different people: Joshua, Daisy, Fritz, Trixie the Cat, all these different people, and details about what they wear and what they do and who they are in their day-to-day life. I've kind of just dumped into this map itself. So in this view, let me walk you through some of these characters just to introduce you to some of the people that I've been thinking about, and to kind of show you that there are some details that I really do need to go and brainstorm on. First off, we're going to start with a character that I named Daisy. Now, I'm not big on names, especially when I'm starting to write, because I always find that I finish writing and then I want to rename the characters. Because by then I've really fully explored them in text, and so oftentimes I find that a name that I came up with before just doesn't fit anymore. So Daisy also happens to be the name of my cat, and that's going to be the working name of my main character for now. So she is the main character. I'd say she's around 15-ish years old. That doesn't need to be set in stone, but that's kind of what I'm thinking of. She lives with her mother and her little brother, and she is essentially the breadwinner for the family. Not that she has a job. She actually has to go out and steal bread and food because they are kind of in hiding, and we'll get to reasons why in a second. But she's the one that kind of leaves the house and comes back with stuff. That said, she is, in terms of skills, a terrible thief. She freaks out, she panics. She's very good at getting away, and she has some specialty skills in that sense, getting away and hiding. But in terms of actually picking a pocket or getting food, she's really bad. And so in terms of getting away, what helps her do that is that she has some magical powers. She is effectively a witch. Not in the sense of she's a witch, burn her, but like she's a witch. She's a female, and she's got some magical powers. However, there's a limitation to these magical powers. Her only spell that she can do, the only essential magical thing or ability that she can do, is that she can shrink people and things and then return them to their original size. She can't make them big, she can't make herself big, but she can make herself or other people or bread, for that sake, super small, and then return it to the original size later on. And that's the only thing that she can do. No other spells. Nobody outside of her immediate family, that's her mother and her brother, knows this, or at least that's what she thinks. And I think part of the plot is that so this secret's going to get out to a few other people. The tricky part about having magic in this world is that in this kingdom where Daisy and her family live, it is illegal to have magical powers, and the people who have magical powers are captured and imprisoned, and that's by a royal decree. And so the way I'm thinking of this is that kind of the rulers of the land see magic users as a threat to them. They're more politicians and maybe kings and queens and whatnot, but they don't want magical users coming in and basically overpowering them. So they kind of put a lid on all this by rounding up all the magical users and keeping them in prison somehow. So it's to Daisy's benefit that only her family knows what she can do. And these are powers that she was just born with. It wasn't something she learned. It's something that she just kind of, as a child, manifested. In terms of what she wears, the only thing that or what she looks like, the only thing that I've really thought up of is that she's going to wear a hood and a robe, and she's going to have some sort of like black scarf that she covers her face with, so that, despite her terrible stealing skills, she doesn't get recognized that much, because people don't really have much to go off of when she's out and about. I'm going to have to come up with some more details when she's, in intimate situations with her family at home, when she doesn't have to cover up what she looks like in terms of hair and eyes and things like that, just so that the reader can kind of have an image for this person. But as far as I've thought it out, all I've got is pieces of clothing that she puts on when she's got to go out and about. The next person I want to talk about, I've named Fritz. And this is just a name I pulled out of the air. He is the King of Thieves. Now, what does that mean to be the King of Thieves? I've got to think up. That's something that I think I probably want to brainstorm a bit on. One sort of theme in this whole story that I think I want to focus on is, what's it mean to be a king? In terms of your responsibilities, in terms of what people expect of you. Because what you'll see here is I have a King of Thieves here. There's also a King of the Land. He's not going to play a big role in this, aside from just having issued the order to, round up and capture all the magic people. But and then I've also got plans for a King of Beggars, this guy Joshua. You can see I haven't thought him through very much at all. But I used to read a lot of sort of werewolf fantasy, and one common thing that I saw in a lot of those books is that if you wanted conflict, if you wanted plot, if you wanted character development in some cases, an easy way to get that in terms of any sort of organization that has an alpha figure, such as a werewolf pack, but it also works well in families, it also works well in social situations, organizations, is to basically say the alpha person, the alpha character, suddenly doesn't do their job well, or isn't meeting the responsibilities or expectations that his loyal followers are expecting him to do. Protect them, provide for them, bail them out when they need it, that sort of thing. So that's what I've got in mind for this King of Thieves, King of Beggars, etc., etc. And Daisy is going to be learning from these guys what it means to be a king. I have here that Fritz is sick with a terminal disease of the lungs. That's something that I came up with kind of on the fly. I may very well change it, but the idea here is that by the end of the book, I intend to spoilers for book that's never been written so far. But I intend to kill off Fritz by the end of the book. And that's going to leave a bit of a vacuum, but that's going to be a vacuum in which I think Daisy's going to be in the middle of by the end of the book. This is all kind of leading into her character arc as well as his. Fritz ultimately throughout the book is going to be a very predominant figure. He's going to have a lot of screen time, so to speak, because he is essentially the mentor, unofficially, to Daisy, teaching her kind of, not necessarily how to be a better thief. This is not a book that's supposed to condone thievery so much, but how to take care of people and how to look outside of you, yourself, and your immediate family. And the other detail here that I have is that Fritz knows he's going to die. He knows his time is limited, and there's no cure that he's really going after. So he is ultimately sort of looking for a successor. He's also good friends with a character I have named, well, I've talked about Joshua. That's as much as I've thought about him. And he's also friends with a Dr. Stefan. Now, Dr. Stefan is a professor at the university. Compared to the King of Beggars and the King of Thieves, he is very high class. He's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, but he's also a scholar of society and organizations and how do people govern themselves and things like that. And so he has become friends with these kings, despite them being significantly poorer and sort of lower on the food chain within this kingdom. He is very interested in how they take care of people, and he's befriended these guys despite him being of a much higher social class. How exactly I plan to have Daisy interacting with Dr. Stefan, I'm not sure, but I think that because Daisy's going to be observing Fritz throughout a large portion of the scenes in this book, I think Fritz needs somebody to have some dialogue with, to interact with, and I think in my mind so far the plan is to make that be Dr. Stefan. Let's talk about Daisy's family a little bit. Daisy has a little brother who I've named Basil, or Basil. Just kind of went with the flower names for a while. Basil is around 11 years old, so a little bit younger. He's got no magical powers. He's an excellent thief. But what's unique about Basil and Daisy's mother is that Daisy has shrunk them. And so they, for pretty much for their entire lives, as of late, they are super small, and they kind of live in this tiny hole in the wall in the outside of a baker's house. And something that Basil likes to do is steal cookies from the baker. He's still at that age where he hasn't quite figured out that his family's poor and that life is kind of weird. He's very playful. He's very comical. He's there to make you smile. And the other thing that he does is he has effectively tamed the baker's cat, Trixie. So he rides around gripping Trixie's fur and exploring the city and having little adventures and getting into trouble all the time. Mama Santa is what I'm going to be calling Daisy and Basil's mother. She rarely leaves the house. She's kind of a stay-at-home cook mom. And sort of the background behind her is she's actually a very strong woman. When she realized that her daughter had these magical powers at a very young age, she made the decision to coax her daughter into shrinking herself and Basil and a bunch of other stuff, furniture and things like that, and setting up this tiny house in the side of the baker's home so that her and her family could be hidden so that Daisy was never taken away. So, I mean, she's taking care of business here, but in terms of today, it's her daughter who leaves the house and mom stays at home. A few notes about Trixie the Cat that I mentioned. The cat likes Basil the most. She's a normal-sized cat. She's not shrunk or anything. Daisy's done nothing to the cat. The cat wears a red collar, and she's got long, fluffy brown fur, in which Basil can hide. The last character that I have here to talk about is Rupert Ignatius Otto, which is a name that I came up from some name generator online. He is a wealthy merchant and proprietor of Rupert Ignatius Otto's Fine Alchemicals, which is essentially a pharmacy, but I'm calling it something different. He wears really fine clothing. He has a classy walking stick. He has a very kind of sleazy businessman demeanor. most of his experience is not actually in chemistry or alchemy or anything like that. It's actually, he steals most of his products, but he's very good at it. Not in that he's a good thief, it's that he just kind of obtains his stuff through cons and through kind of sleazy business deals, and then manages to profit heavily off of them. Anyway, so he is there essentially to be an antagonist. He's not necessarily an antagonist against Daisy up front. He doesn't even know that Daisy is going to be a protagonist, but he's going to be the one that blocks Daisy from basically stealing things that she needs to steal. And this is getting into the plot that I've started to think out in at least Act 1 that's going to kick things into motion for Act 2 and Act 3, etc., etc. So let's switch over to Act 1, the scene list. And we could go through in this view, but I think we're going to swap over to the corkboard view and expand this a little bit. So in my corkboard view here, I've got requirements. These are the things that I came up with mostly in last video, of just things that I need to make sure that are in Act 1, checkboxes that are, requirements that I've satisfied in order to have a good book in the end. And I think for next video, if you're enjoying this, stay tuned, subscribe, etc. But for next video, I think what I need to do is I need to expand this list of requirements. Before I go and write more scenes, I think I need to go spend some time doing active research on what makes a good Act 1. Because all of this stuff has been off kind of the top of my head and off of stuff that I've read in the past, other YouTubers, etc. But I think there's got to be a lot more in this requirements list. There's the obvious stuff. I need to introduce my main character. Where's she from? What are her ambitions? What's stopping her from meeting those goals? What's she look like? Things like that. That's kind of the easy stuff, the reader hook. What's going to be in that first chapter that people picking up the book in the bookstore reading for a couple of pages, what's going to be in there in those first couple of pages that makes them want to buy the book, that gets them excited to read the rest of the book. Those are things that I kind of knew, and most people I think should know, but I think there's going to be more requirements in here. So next video when I come back, I intend to walk through a lot more of these requirements in all the different acts, just kind of outlining what I've learned from my research over the next couple of days in this area. Let's head back to the scene list here. So far I have 3 scenes that I've outlined. Let's expand all of these. Scene 1, and this essentially meets the requirements for my hook. I think it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a bit of introduction of Daisy trying to steal a wheel of cheese, and then it doesn't work out too well, and there's a bit of a chase scene. So some nice action, some nice character introduction, a little bit of the world. You don't want to stop and smell the roses of the world when you're having a chase scene, but there will be a little bit of description there as well. So something I can do actually is put a pin from here up to this scene and say, this is my reader hook. In short, what I've got for this scene, Daisy's, we described that Daisy is a terrible thief. She gets the sweaty palms and doesn't like what she's doing. She has some moral debates about why she has to steal this wheel of cheese, and ultimately she's got to feed her family. It doesn't go terribly well. She gets not caught but discovered, and there's a bit of a chase scene. At the end, she manages to get away by slipping around a corner and then shrinking herself in the cheese super quick, so small that her pursuants don't find her. And then she is able to basically walk into the front door of the hole in the wall, tiny house where her family lives, and the side of the baker's hut, cottage, whatever I want to call it. And that's the end of that scene. It basically, is just there to hook the reader and introduce Daisy. Next, I guess I actually have 4 scenes here total, because I have one here that's just called 2 Mysterious Men Discuss the Need for New Kings. Now, the 2 mysterious men I'm thinking are going to either be Fritz and Joshua, the King of Thieves and King of Beggars, or Fritz and Dr. Stefan, his friend. I'm not sure, but the idea is that this scene kind of introduces them without going into too much detail, without naming them, because later on I think I want to, reveal their names and who they are when Daisy meets them. After that, I think we ping back to Daisy and her mother talking in their kitchen in this basically shrunken house. Daisy is then able to just verbalize where she is in life. What does she want? What is she dissatisfied with, and what's stopping her from reaching her goals? That's something that I really struggled with in past NaNoWriMos, is being able to describe a character's motivations. Do I need to necessarily say that in the dialogue? No, but that's the goal of that dialogue, is to basically have some just family chat where we get to understand what's Daisy thinking about and get a better understanding of her than just what she looks like and that she's a terrible thief. At the end of that scene, just to kind of add some more action and make the reader smile a little bit, we're going to introduce Basil. He's going to show up, interrupt into the probably the meat of a very intimate mother-daughter conversation, like younger brothers do. Carrying a large-sized cookie, and outside of the house, we're going to hear Trixie the cat meowing, waiting for Basil to come back out and play. Mama Santa, Trixie's mother, or Basil's mother, is going to be concerned that the cat's going to reveal their location and make some commentary about someday that cat's going to eat us all and things like that. Lastly, we have a scene where Daisy actually gets to meet Fritz. Fritz comes out and basically reveals that he knows Daisy's secret, that he knows she's a magic user, what she can do, and he's going to straight up blackmail her to go and steal a potion from the antagonist that I mentioned before, Rupert, Ignatius, Otto. And he's going to give her a time frame in which she has to do it. And otherwise he's a fairly sensible, friendly guy, but he's basically needs something from this that needs this potion from Rupert, Ignatius, Otto, and he's going to use Daisy to get it. Now Daisy is going to start contemplating, how do I deal with this guy? This has never happened before. I've never had to deal with someone knowing my secret. On the one hand, Daisy is powerful enough that she could shrink him to be super small, stick him in a cage, and then treat him like a pet rat. But she's got some morals against that. And in fact, I think I'm going to have her discuss that over with her mom, who's going to totally veto the idea. On the other hand, she can't just let Fritz go free, because even if she goes and does the task of stealing the potion for Fritz, he still knows the secret. He could go blackmail her again and again and again. So it'll be an ongoing problem that she has to deal with. And suddenly she's going to be very incentivized to learn more about Fritz. And because Fritz is the King of Thieves, because Fritz wants essentially a successor, or not an heir, but somebody to kind of pick up his mantle, and he knows that he's going to die, he has basically, I think, selected Daisy to become that. And that's sort of the arc that is going to... That's essentially the character arc for Daisy over the course of the novel. How we get there, though, I haven't really thought it out. I need to think and brainstorm on some really interesting scenes in which Daisy can go spying on Fritz and see what he does as the King of Thieves. And the whole time, Daisy's trying to find some way of dealing with this problem of Fritz knowing her secret. On the top of that, she's also going to have to balance figuring out a way to go and steal this potion from Rupert, Ignatius, Otto, who's going to have his own line of defenses against magical small people. Why and how? I haven't thought that out either. So there's lots of holes here. That was the point of this exercise, though. Get all of my thoughts into the document here and figure out what needs to be solved. Lastly, let's talk about Act 3. I mentioned that for Act 2, I essentially have nothing. I really don't. But here in Act 3, I've swapped over, in case you didn't catch that, I've swapped over to a different scene list for Act 3. Here we have two scenes that I've imagined, and so I've essentially come up with the beginning of the story and sort of the end of the story, where I want to go. How we get there, I still haven't figured out. But towards the end of the story, Daisy's managed to obtain the potion. She's managed to learn a ton about Fritz, about Joshua, not so much about Joshua, but about Fritz and about Dr. Stefan. She's learned a lot about being what it takes to be King of Thieves, etc. But she gets the potion, she's running over to deliver it to Fritz, and she meets Dr. Stefan in person. Dr. Stefan knows who she is, but this could be the first time they're actually meeting face to face, so to speak. but she learns that Fritz has died earlier that day. And she's kind of like, oh, well, now what do I do? That's one problem solved. Maybe it's a problem that she had resolved herself to not solving. That's one, the problem of Fritz knowing her secret about being able to use magic. That's essentially resolved with him dead, so long as Dr. Stefan doesn't know it as well, which he doesn't. And then she's like, well, maybe I should take this potion back, because she still doesn't have the heart of a thief. And Dr. Stefan explains to her what the potion was for. The potion was actually meant for this man named Joshua, who is the king of beggars, Fritz's friend. And Joshua is also on death's door. She gets to go and meet Joshua, meet basically the realm of beggars, and this kind of hooks into what could be a follow-up story, or it could just wrap up on its own. But she learns that this task that Fritz set her on to go get this potion all along was something that was meant for someone else. This was not, all along, the King of Thieves was not asking her to go steal something for his own gain, but for someone else's benefit, despite him knowing that he was going to die. Suddenly, it's meant to be sort of this plot twist where all of the pieces sort of fall together in terms of what was Fritz's agenda. And as she's going to meet Joshua, I think that I'm going to have some just sort of extras, so to speak, not necessarily characters by name, but other beggars and thieves that are there to basically tend to Joshua and take care of him, because he's taken care of them in the past. But when she arrives, they're going to refer to her as the Queen of Thieves, and suddenly we have this change of title, and the character arc is nailed in at that point, which I really like. Joshua gets to explain to Daisy a little bit of what's been going on, what he does, what Fritz does, a little bit of history between the two. And he takes the potion and immediately starts to improve from whatever's ailing him. Haven't done the research. I don't even know if I need to. I mean, for the age group that this reading is meant to be for, I can keep it kind of simple. But, he starts to get better. It looks like he's going to be okay. But he gets to kind of wrap things up, answer a lot of unanswered questions, and we'll see it. Maybe even throw in a hook for a follow-up sequel. There's a lot that I could do there. So that is all that I've thought of for Act 3. There's got to be a lot more. There's got to be sort of a final battle, maybe sort of a final test for Daisy to go through, some the big action, some sort of climax there towards the end. I'm imagining that will probably occur somewhere in the act of actually stealing the potion from Rupert, Ignatius, Otto. But how that works, the dynamics of it, what props I'm going to need, I haven't thought that out through as well. That's why we're starting this in August, so that we have a few months to think it through before November, when I've got to write it all down. So hopefully some of that sounded exciting to you. Like I said, this is the brain dump video. the brain dump of the brain dump, in fact. Just reporting on all that I've thought up over the last couple of months thinking of this story. And already I know there's some problems I need to solve. There's some holes I need to fill in this plot. I'm going to need to do some active brainstorming. In order to do that, I need to come up with solid, concrete questions to start from. And I'm probably going to use this tool to do more brainstorming. I kind of like being able to, hop back into this capture mode, where I can, just start from one node and move on. That's kind of what this tool is built for. I'm not entirely sold that this tool is all that I'd hoped it to be, but it has been quite useful, and it's been enjoyable to use. So I don't regret the purchase. But anyway, that's where I'm going to be going forward. Like I said, before I want to do that, though, I want to go and do some solid research into the requirements for each of these acts, and just really get into plot structure and how to write a good novel from the top down, rather than come up with all these scenes and characters and ideas and then try and ask myself, how do I write a good novel with these things? Before I get emotionally attached to those things, I want to lay out the requirements and just brainstorm what's it going to take to finish the novel and do it well. That'll be the subject of next video. You might say that me saying that now in this video is my source of accountability for the next couple of days, but once we nail down all the requirements, then I think the video after that is going to be me doing some brainstorming in this tool to solve some serious problems. We might talk about what's it mean to be a king of thieves and really flesh out that so that we can kind of figure out what scenes we need with Fritz and Daisy. Or we might brainstorm mechanics for stealing a potion from a wealthy merchant. You know, there's plenty of things to think about here. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, comment, etc. I've already told you there's going to be follow-up videos. If you want to know when they come out immediately, ring the bell after you hit the subscription. That will give you a notification as soon as I post the next video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you have any suggestions, things I've missed in the requirements? What do you think of what I've come up with so far? I appreciate all the commentary. It's exciting to come up with this stuff. I really enjoy storycraft, and why more people don't talk about this versus, you know, just hiding what they're writing away from the world, I don't entirely understand. I'm not locked into this. There's no promises. This is all just plans. But I really enjoy it. So anyway, again, I'm DG Wiggins, and I will see you all next time with another video.